Albanese government ministers are staying silent on when they first learnt about the illegal boat arrival. After our revelations, the asylum seekers landed days before the Prime Minister told Australia. Immigration Minister Andrew Giles, the Home Affairs Minister Claire O'Neill and Defence Minister Richard Marles are each refusing to say when they first learned that boats had reached our shores. These are the third boats to touch down on Australian soil in a decade. They bypassed the aerial surveillance and the border controls. And this is now the first time that Nauru has been opened in 9 years. Usually, boats have been intercepted at sea and turned back. It's part of the long-time coalition's successful turn-back policy. But as we reported on Monday evening, the asylum seekers in WA arrived days before Albanese claimed to have found out about them on Friday afternoon during a media conference.
I've been travelling in the car, so I haven't been advised about that.
So, as we spoke about on Monday night, there was widespread knowledge in defence circles of the illegal arrivals on Thursday, the day before the Prime Minister got a shock on that Friday afternoon media conference. And then, as Paige Taylor in The Australian reported, these boats may have arrived overnight on Monday. Well, my Sky News daytime colleague, Kieran Gilbert, asked the Defence Minister, Richard Marles, whether it was accurate that Defence found out about the boats on Thursday.
Sharri reported that she was told by a Defence source that Defence was aware of that boat arrival on Thursday of last week. Why was the Prime Minister only notified on Friday?
Oh, again, I'm not going to provide commentary about unnamed sources. I mean, what's important here is that we have responded to this moment expeditiously. I mean, those who came by boat and who were arrived in Australia are now in Nauru.
As you saw, the Defence Minister clearly avoiding answering just a simple question. So to clarify this, we asked Marles again today precisely when he found out about the boat arrival. Was it Thursday? And why hadn't he told the Prime Minister? No response. Andrew Giles also refused to answer when he'd found out about the boats. He directed us to Claire O'Neill. She had nothing to say either. Nothing. The only conclusion you can draw from this is that there's a reason they're not answering the question, which is that they or their departments likely did have earlier knowledge about the boat arrivals, but didn't inform the PM. And perhaps this was to avoid the heat of scrutiny during parliamentary question time last week. Coming as it did so soon after the release of 149 criminals onto our streets, the reality is that this is a government that looks like it's lost control of national security because it really doesn't believe at its heart in tough measures. Did Albanese and Giles and Claire O'Neill really not realise that Australians would be angry about the release of hundreds of criminals, including murderers and child sex offenders, onto our streets? And now, as you know, many of those released have been accused of reoffending. There have been some 27 alleged reoffences. You can't help but feel that Labor, under Albanese and Andrew Giles, and remember, Andrew Giles once represented the 433 asylum seekers from the Tampa case, well, this government seems to have reverted to their radical left past. Labor has given up pretending to be tough on border security, or maybe it doesn't care about social cohesion. It worries more about politics and winning marginal seats in Western Sydney than the safety of Australians. The Australian newspaper's former editor-in-chief, Paul Kelly, made some very important points today in quite an extraordinary article where he held a mirror up to modern-day Australia. And he spoke about how a major ethical issue has arisen because a National Senator, Perrin Davey, had 2 glasses of wine in Parliament House, while across the nation a tide of anti-Semitism has relentlessly gathered pace, threatening Jewish families and businesses. Paul Kelly writes that the Labor Party that boasts about its morality is in denial about the global wave of anti-Semitism and its penetration into Australian society. He asks, what role is the great Australian Labor Party playing? Sadly, it has virtually no role. It is largely missing in action. Perhaps it has market research saying the public isn't worried about anti-Semitism or that Jews are only a tiny portion of the population. If so, he writes, this is about as dumb as the market research once suggesting the voice would be carried. And Paul Kelly says that Labor needs to understand one thing, that it has essentially left the Jewish community in Australia without cover during the most damaging and sustained outbreak of anti-Semitism since World War II, an outbreak that he says, and he's right, is only getting worse.